Welcome everyone to 52 Living Ideas. We we as the host, thank you for joining us tonight. The hosts tonight are myself, Jing, and Joe. Um, Tonight the discussion is on various types of friendships, and this is going to be an interactive presentation. Um, Jing, Joe, and I are going to give our thoughts on friendship, and then after we finish giving our thoughts, we're going to open it up to questions. We're going to have a list of questions, well, not list, but some questions for the audience for you guys to answer if you want to. We encourage participation, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. So I just wanted to be really clear on that. So whenever you're ready, Jing, you can take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone to show up. Yeah, so this month we didn't prepare very well. So we thought, why don't we do our own discussion? We didn't have a presenter, but actually personally I think it's better to have discussion among ourselves than just listen to somebody else to present. And then this topic come up because I was meeting, I have this painter friend, we have a couple women friends. The painter always call us, oh, why don't we get together? Like we drinking tea till the midnight. So we chat different things. Four of us are very different personalities. And so somehow we connect very well. The interesting is like the painter friend have very different. She bought a island, bought a house, grow a lot of flowers. She doesn't work, she paint, but she doesn't want to sell it. And she just like, if you have a good life now, your life is taken care of. Don't worry about the future. Very different thinking process than me. But interestingly, every time I meet with her, especially this couple of days ago, it's really helped me to think a lot, reflect on myself. I suddenly realized, oh, I actually like to change a lot. I cannot stay with one thing for long. I have so many interests and it's always changed. So I set up a lot of groups, but then I get bored of them. I start another group. So it's like constantly changing. I suddenly realized, this is something prevent me to go to the next level. So I reserved the book, Good to Great. So I think maybe that's something I need to work on because somebody told me, maybe because of my name in Chinese actually is change. So somebody said, maybe you should change your name, like to something like more like last or sustainable, then there's a Chinese saying, your name actually defines your personality, believe it or not. I actually personally believe it. But anyway, it just make me, then I read somewhere they said friends are mirrors ourselves. Because interestingly, even though we care about, actually most people there care about themselves very much. But interesting, the God designed us, we cannot see ourselves. So we only can see us through other people. We can see our actions through other people's reaction. So it's kind of interesting because I'm actually just learning surf skate recently. So it's so funny, like any sport you're learning, the most difficult thing is like you don't see your posture, even like ski. That's why the people usually they have to take videos because I was doing ski and I teach ski last year, and I thought before that was ski is just free and it's fine. But then when I start teaching, I realized there's so many skills that all the things I did was not correct. So I try to correct my position. The interesting thing is you can't. I thought I did so, I deep bind all this. When I see the video, you can see obviously I'm not in the right position. That was like, if we can see ourselves, we will do so much better because we can see how we act, how we dress, how we interact with other people. So I would even have this invention idea. Maybe we can have this video camera somewhere, so they can instantly show us, have this image, so we can actually see ourselves from other people's point of view. That'd be interesting. But anyway, so the interesting is we can see ourselves, especially when we do sports. We cannot correct. That's why they said the sportsmen have this talent. They actually, even though they can't see themselves, they know their body position. without even seeing it. I think that's something you can also cultivate it. But the key point is I realize, friends is so important. That's why I write up these things. And luckily, Joe magically edited into much better English than I can ever did. And so I just thought, oh my God, friends are so important because they help us to understand ourselves so much better. And here, all of you are friends. We are friends because we help each other grow together. And also the power of group learning, like we are learning third grade. I'm already over 50 years old. It's so funny. I'm buying this apple and they say, oh, you have all this toy for the kids. And no, that's for me. So, but anyway, so we have a group of friends. We learn together. It's so much fun because I'm always trying to find a good way for exercise, which is fun. Like I'm architect. I do my work. I love my work. So I was like, why can't we find this fun way of exercise? I went to Orange Theory. I was waiting for the time to be done. Then I feel good afterwards. But why can't I enjoy the time that I exercise instead just enjoy the time after exercise? So I'm so glad the family found Surfskate because I mentioned a long time ago, like before I come to America, I want to do three things. One is surfing, one is seeing architecture, one is ski. And I was able to do ski because I live in Seattle, but I only try surfing 1 or 2 times. It's pretty hard. But now I can practice on the land. So maybe one day I can actually surf. But anyway, the point is like when you learn things together with other people, it's so much fun, so much easy, and you learn a lot. That's what we do here with 5 to Living Idea. It's a magical place. So that's the inspiration of the topic. So I want to pass on. Sorry, I'm like to distract with different ideas. But now it's Joel Amnick's turn.
Thank you, Jing. Joe, do you want to go next or you want me to go?
Why don't you go and then I'll go.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. If not, I can go.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So when I thought of this topic and we were discussing this topic, it's such a broad topic that I was almost against doing it. But then when we defined it and we kind of defined it, if we saw it in the write-up, I think there's like 3 categories, and I'm just going to use my own words and not the words in the meetup. So I think there's 3 types of friendships. And I think first, like there's the friendship that's like family. You grow up together, your parents know your other people's parents, you visit with each other's families, you're in and out of each other's houses, and you've continued that friendship like it's family. You may not see them for a while, but when you connect, it's like you never left. And those friendships to me are important because you can catch up and they can provide you with feedback and they'll tell you the truth out of love, or at least the friendships that I have that are like family will tell you the truth out of love, and you can take it out of love, and they can kind of look at it objectively because they know you as a person, and they can like step back from the situation because they may not know the other people that you're talking about when you're catching up. So uh for me, those are like lifetime friends. Those are people that are like family. You know, in some cases you're closer than family. They're like your brothers and sisters, or as my family say, we're all cousins. You know, so that's the first category that I see. The second category is, they're really good friends. You like hanging out with them. You have common interests. You enjoy certain things together. You enjoy doing certain activities together, and you get together and you talk. And it's a time to really uh, bring levity into your life. Especially if you're going through a hard time, you can hang out with these people, and these people are great to hang out with. You can talk, um, and you can enjoy yourself, and you can enjoy the hobbies together. And I think that's great because you need that. Like you need that levity, you need that fun in your life. Um, they can be really good friends, or they can be, people that you just do this activity with, but they have value. And I think sometimes we would call them acquaintances, but I don't know if I would necessarily call it that, because they do provide and add value to your life. Um, I think the third category is kind of where you would put acquaintances. These are people that you know. Um, you're not really close, but you hang out in the same groups and you can talk to them. Um, I think they're more people that you know by association, and they can bring certain perspectives into your life when you're talking about general topics. And the importance of those people is that again, it can be light, it can be fun, um, nothing too serious. You can share your likes and dislikes about a certain topic. These are people maybe you'd have hobbies with. I know before the conversation started, Jeannie was talking about a group that she meets with in Kensington. I think it was a bicycle group. uh was that right, Jeannie? Okay. And you know there are people that you share common interests, and that provides value too. And again, I think it's that levity, but it's not to the level of like a full on friendship. And these are just people that you have fun with. And I think you have coworkers that you're friends with at work. Um, I think that's where we talked about more of the mentorship aspect in the write up. They're like your mentor, mentee, somebody you can, I wouldn't even say it's a coworker, but it's someone like in your, maybe in your professional career, that you can look up to, and you can like you can have uh, a friendship that it's beneficial to both, because I think being a mentor or having a mentor has a certain value. You can talk about a specific thing, and I think um, that helps in that they're focused on that specific thing. Like maybe it's your career, for instance. I'm just giving that as an example. It could be other areas too, but as a career, they could be your mentor, that person that pushes you to that next level. They're a person that's almost like, I don't need to be your friend in a sense, right? Like they don't have to be your friend, like your best buddy or whatever, because they're going to push you and you're not going to like it at some point. But that's kind of what they're there to do. They're there to just make you go past your comfort zone. So they may not be your best friend, but they're the friend that's going to push you to new heights. Um, so I think those are just some of the areas that we can explore tonight, in terms of friendships. I think they're all valuable. I think, you know, I think there's room for friendships like that in everybody's life. And I think having those friendships that I just mentioned is valuable for every life. So just those are some of my initial thoughts on friendship.
So I'll give a brief overview of what how I define friendship, and we've we've gone through and I think Vineek and Jang have actually done a very good job of actually capturing the categories aspects of things. So maybe what I'll do is just talk a little bit more about the some of the more universal principles when it comes to friendship and dissect what it is, and then we can kind of maybe unpack that and talk about our personal experiences and how they fit into these categories. I think that that might be a good idea as well. So um, I will just say one of the first things that I think that is essential in friendship is the idea of trust. Um, you have to trust the person that you're supposedly friends with. And this is about having the ability to receive feedback in order to improve. And if you're unable to trust the individual who is giving you that feedback, well, then you're not necessarily, it's not going to be something that's actionable. So I think trust is actually uh, essential on a number of levels, in the sense, not only that are you trusting their feedback, um, but can you be yourself with that individual? And once that is established, you kind of have a degree of transparency that then exists, that you can have open and honest communication. You're comfortable with who you are in front of that person. And there is very little fear of any kind of judgment or betrayal. And when you have that connection with somebody, it's special. And then you can start to really see what the benefits of friendship are. There's also, I think, another aspect of it is integrity. Now, I've read a little bit about this from one of my Stoic mentors, obviously, with Massimo Pigliucci had written something with Cicero, and Socrates have both said the same thing, that ethics and shared values actually play a really important role when it comes to friendship. Think about it in terms of a friend would never put you in a position where that you would have to do something illegal for them. In the sense that maybe that put you in a position where you're really uncomfortable with, taking a certain action. They would actually do anything to prevent that from occurring. So I think that there's a certain degree of integrity and trustworthiness and moral principles that come in to a relationship that actually is, that I find to be essential. Again, this is also relates back to one of the most important points of the evening, which is feedback. If we're going to get feedback, this is the type of individual that we're going to, we trust that they have our best interests involved. That brings me to actually another aspect of friendship. A lot of times, there have been times where I've had quote unquote friends that really never necessarily had my best interests at heart. There was a certain even degree of envy that if something went well for me, they wouldn't necessarily be happy. And I think that that's a real tell, because of you're really, and you can tell that both from the individual, but also from yourself. If you're not truly happy for the other person that's doing well, and you consider them a friend, you really have to ask yourself, what kind of friend are you? Just as the other person, if they're not acting as if they're your friend when things are going well for you, then you kind of really wonder if this is somebody that is that has your best interests at heart. I find a friend is somebody that wills you to be a better person. And being a better person, I think, includes with that ethics aspect of things. I think there's other aspects of it, of friendship, that are other qualities. I think that if you dig a little deeper, the idea of forgiveness is very important when it comes to friendships. We understand that each one of us is, lacks perfection, so that when we maybe fall short of expectations, our friends may fall short of our expectations, or we fall short of theirs, that they are able to look past those things, as long as they weren't too egregious and weren't, and the intention wasn't an ill intent to hurt one of our friends, where we just didn't measure up to the to what somebody may have thought of us. Then I think that's I think that understanding that people will fail is an important part of actually being a friend, and emotional support as well. When I say emotional support, is to have some degree of empathy for what somebody else is experiencing. And when I say that, having that empathy, I really mean it, in the sense that many times we look at friends and as somebody that what are they going to do for us? And really the question that we should be asking ourselves is, what are we going to be doing for them? What do we bring to the relationship? And that's where being empathetic towards the other individual, what they're going through, even though we may not feel it to be maybe that important, even to a certain degree, it's important to that person at that particular moment in time. So the role of empathy, I think, is important, mostly because it requires you to think about how you're going to be a friend versus actually what you're going to get out of the relationship. And many relationships that I've actually have spoken to, a lot of my two friends in particular over the past year, that have had failed friendships, if you will. One of them would be considered romantically involved. And in both instances, they were both laying out the reasons as to why it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work was that they were saying what the other person wasn't doing, but never once they asked themselves what they were actually doing. So friendship is about virtue and the pursuit of virtue as well. It's a very important part of friendship. These bonds are these are very deep topics, and these are essential not only to, and I see Bill's here. I mean, in economic transactions, obviously trust is one of those things, but we're talking about something much deeper. But they're essentially, in every aspect of our lives, in order for us to function in a meaningful society. Friendships, there's different categories, as we had already talked about, are essential for us for a civil society. So I think with all that is there are things where it's important to also know. I often think about friends sometimes when these are just some qualities that I appreciate in my friends. They make time no matter how busy they are. So that to some degree, the priority aspect of things, that they are prioritizing the friendship above material things. A lot of times, people are so caught up in their lives pursuing material things. And Socrates talks about this. And it's a really great course, Donald Robertson's course, Stoicism. And he goes through a whole section. And it's actually based on Socrates. But there's a whole section on friendship, and it gets into very deep concepts. But one of them is that the idea that we end up pursuing a lot of these material things all the time, but we don't actively pursue friendships as much. So somebody that's actually willing to take the time and make you the priority actually shows you what their values are. And if that's reciprocated, then you have a set of shared values. And that allows you to actually make each other better in that process. So I think that, when we're thinking about this in terms of, values, what people actually value, they value things. I had a friend actually early on that we had done a very small business deal, and let's just say he took more than he should have. And it had nothing to do with the amount that he had taken. It was the fact that he felt the need to take. And I was disappointed. That individual also ended up going on and exploiting some other people in a very unethical way. But what he was saying is essentially that his values were were of material goods, not necessarily that of friendships. So again, all of these things are essential when we're talking about coming here building communities, that people have a certain degree of integrity and honesty in what they're sharing and what they're trying to provide everyone else with, because that's actually how friends get better. Now, we can talk a little bit about the distinctions between how groups work together and individual friends, and those are different dynamics without a doubt. But I find that most friendships that are worth anything are based on virtue, based on integrity, based on trust, based on shared values. And so that's why this is such a very deep topic. It's how we connect with each other. And ultimately, if you take the pro-social aspect of it, how we interact with each other, this comes to how you attain wisdom. You know, you don't necessarily attain wisdom by and learning how to make good decisions by just coming to them all by yourself. And having good friends that actually provide you that feedback, that honest feedback, and provide you with actionable feedback is, you know, I think is, you know, is essential to our own personal development. I think that I could go into what constitutes good feedback, but perhaps the best thing to do next is to maybe have some people share for a few minutes as to how they would define good friendship. And then actually talk about, maybe we could talk about the feedback aspects of it. Because I think that that's what we get here at 52 Living Ideas. It's one of the most important parts of this, is that the feedback that we receive is what we can take away, and it's the relationships that we develop here. What could actually even pervert that feedback loop is something good to explore. But again, I think starting with the whole idea of friendship is a good place to start. So I see we have one exclamation point in the chat, and I'll close there.
Joe, just a quick question. Can you restate the question you want the audience to answer? The first one?
How they actually define how they define friendships. How would they articulate some of the characteristics of what a good friend would be? And then we could talk about this in two different ways. Like, again, one in the group setting aspect and one in the personal interactions that we have. But I think nonetheless, there has to be a degree of integrity on both ends.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have similar questions. I think we can ask, what do you think
Wait,
is most
Jing?
important?
Jing,
Oh.
hold on. I think we need to do one question at a time.
It's similar.
So
it's similar. You know, let me finish. It's similar. So because we were talking about different. What do you think is most important quality of a friend? So it's very similar to what Joe said. So that's come to my mind. What order, in the order of importance, because nobody is perfect. What do you think is in order of importance? What's make good friends? What do you think? You know, I think people have different priorities.
Okay, so if anyone wants to answer either question, you can type exclamation point in the chat. And I see we have up first Shrikant.
All right. So firstly, just amazing presentation. So I'm going to answer both these questions just based on what three of you have said. Okay. I was making notes and I see 5 things in a specific order. You know, everything that you've said, you know, I saw them fall into 5 different categories. The first one is character. The second one I will call empathy. So there is a character group, there is an empathy group, there is a support group, there is a feedback group, and then there is the growth group. So those are the 5. So for example, in character, we have the, you know, character itself. You know, you can talk about the virtue of people. You can talk about the trust that they engender. This is about who they are, which is, as best as I understand it, comes first. Because if you don't have that, the other ones don't really matter as much. The second thing is that of empathy, where, as Jordan Peterson puts it, ones that actually desire what is good for you. There is an element of forgiveness, of basically they are for you. They are saying yes to you. So there is the empathy part. That's the second group of things, a second group of characteristics. The third group is that of support. This is where family comes in. This is all kinds of support, emotional support, comfort, even enjoyment, I would put in that category. So that's the third category. The fourth category is that of feedback. Here, the idea of mirror, idea of people honestly telling you things. And again, these later things depend on the other. It depends on the fact that people are actually supportive of you. People actually care about you, that they are very good people. So each of these 5 things depend on one another. So the fourth is the feedback. And the fifth one is growth, where people are actually challenging you. People are actually inspiring you. People are actually, giving you things that will take you to the next level. But all of that presupposes, so for example, this growth that comes from friendship relies on the honest feedback. The feedback also relies on the general commitment of support to each other. It depends on this deep empathy for each other, desiring the good for each other, and ultimately it rests on the individual characters. So these are the 5 things that I see. That's it.
Thank you, Shrikant. If anyone else wants to answer the question that Jing and Joe have proposed, please type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. If we have no takers, Joe, did you? Oh, Jing, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
So I want to add a little bit about the feedback. So, good friends can give you feedback honestly, but I think even the people don't really tell us the truth, we can still get feedback even from not so good friends, because we actually can observe. Sometimes it's very interesting. Sometimes the enemies actually are best teachers. I mentioned if we have friends with very high EQ, we hardly learn anything. It's like you play tennis with somebody who's so good, they feed you balls all the time, so you don't need to move. You think you're a great player. But when you play with very bad player, then you have to be good. So I actually learned a lot from the people with very, very low EQ actually. Then I said, oh my God, how can he do this? It's terrible. And then I realized, maybe I did the same thing to other people sometime too. Actually, it's help us reflect. I think those also kind of feedback, maybe not intentionally, but also very valuable. So maybe we can call them friends too, or enemies, whatever.
Thank you, Jing. Up next, I have Jeannie, followed by Christy, and Joe.
I think. Oh, go ahead. I'm next, Christy. So, but I'll be short. Joe, I just find that you're so stringent, and I mean, your requirements for a friend are very strict. And for me, it's almost like friendship is a default. I mean, there's only a few people that are sort of my enemies, and almost everybody else is my friend. And I mean, you're with somebody. I mean, you sit next to them on a bus or something like that, and you can connect and learn a lot about things. And I think also to go to the level, you don't have to hand over your checkbook. You can just, talk. And in that aspect, it seems like you could be friends with pretty much almost everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Up next, I have Christy, followed by Joe, and then I want to interject another question into the conversation. Christy.
I've liked what everybody has said so far. I find that I have kind of created my own extended family, the people that I choose to be in my family, and where we win, like we're each giving each other different strengths that we each have and that we need in our lives. So, you guys are talking about family. Sometimes it's biological, but they may not be able to feed me in a certain way. So over the years, I have accumulated people who can feed into me in a healthy way, and I can feed back into them in a healthy way. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up too is, iron sharpens iron. That's kind of a biblical verse, where I think sometimes in life we are, I have experienced friendships, relationships where they have sharpened me more. Somebody else was talking about, feedback and, helping and improving ourselves, or taking that advantage of hearing from other people's feedback and to help us change or improve. But also in return, I know that I have also done that for other people at different points in other people's lives. So it doesn't mean that those friendships are going to last forever. But that kind of is a little deeper of what you guys were talking about with feedback, mentorship, that kind of thing that I think are also very important.
Thank you, Christy. Up next, I have Allison, followed by Joe.
I agree with a lot of what was already said. One of the things that I was thinking about, though, was two things. The idea of forgiveness, I think, is really important. I feel like with this pandemic, I saw a lot of people lose friendships because we were under so much stress that people were acting in a way that wasn't really who they are. It's how they were dealing with the stress. I have one very, very good friend who was very stressed and angry a lot, and she had another good friend who wound up dropping her. And she talked to me about it. She thought that I should drop her, and I said no, because I felt like this was her reaction to the stress of what we were going through. And I felt like, sometimes you had to forgive people for some things because of all the many years before when, she was not like that, and people aren't perfect. And, but I actually had a conversation with another friend about this recently. I said, I feel like all these people are all tossing friendships aside so easily. And I said, maybe I'm the other way. I just sort of hoard friendships. I just keep them around for decades. And I say, yeah, they get on my nerves and I get on their nerves, but I stay friends with them anyway, because I like most of who they are, even if they have some characteristics that annoy me. I like who mostly they are, but I think I'm also a little different because I feel like once I make a friend, I have these friendships for years and years and years, but I don't just let everybody into the club that easily, I'll be friendly with people, but it takes a lot for me to let somebody in very deeply. And then once I do, and I feel like I can trust them, then, I'm real loyal for a long time. But then the other thing that I was thinking about, the idea of feedback, I think a good friend will give you feedback, but there is a fine line between feedback and criticism. And I think there are some people who they're just very bossy, controlling people, and they like to criticize. And so sometimes you have to look at if are they giving you feedback because they actually care about your best interest, or are they giving you feedback because they just like to order everybody around and tell everybody what to do? And that's different. And the other thing is that I think in terms of accepting advice from people, I feel like when I look at my friends, I've known them long enough that I know what advice I'll accept from which person. You know, I mean, I have one friend who's really good with money, and I will listen to her very carefully about any financial advice. And then I have another friend who's horrible with money, and I don't tell her this, but in my head, I always think that, and she loves to give financial advice. I think whatever she says to do, if I do the opposite, I'll come out okay. So sometimes you have to know your friend, like they might be a good friend, but they might not have a clue about what they're talking about. So you sort of have to kind of know, like, you know, at the end of the day, you have to trust your own judgment. And that's important because, you know, none of our friends are perfect and they might have their own blind spots about certain things. So we have to kind of, you know, take everything they say with a grain of salt. But anyway, that's it for now.
Thank you, Allison. Up next, I have Eleanor, and then I think I know Joe and Jeannie are up, and of course, feel free to talk about whatever you want, but I just want to introduce a question into the conversation after Eleanor goes. So, Eleanor, you haven't spoken yet, so please feel free to share.
Thank you for having me. I like this topic today. My experience showed that I can choose who is not my friend, but I cannot choose who is my friend. And I think people choose you. You don't choose them. But I think I can protect myself and say, I don't want to be surrounded by a certain type of people. Because either they my interests are not aligned with them. But in generally, I want to welcome everyone. I have over 1,000 reviews because I did Airbnb and I hosted in 8 years over 5,000 guests. So the reviews vary. I went through different times where I was happy to get reviews. Then I went for a couple years, 2-3 years, where I was scared to read my reviews, where I was literally getting the breakdowns and felt like I can't even handle to see anything what people would write about my home, or because it just hurts because you want to be so good, you know, you just want to offer people service and this is what you have, but then people come and they maybe don't like it, you know. And I'm pretty accurate in what I'm offering, and then it hurts more, you know. And then I have also like a personal style, and then I started reading it again. It depends on kind of like phases I'm going through, and there are different types of feedback. I would mention people would write. Some would write feedback about how I performed hosting them. Basically, how helpful I was to them, how effective. And this was fine because I gave my best and I never doubt I would not perform well. And then there's another feedback such as my personality. And then I thought, oh, that's interesting because they actually don't pay me a salary, but they take upon themselves to hurt me or to review me how they find me. And this, I thought it's a little bit too much, because if you think of that, I don't monetize on it. I'm just like paying my rent, you know, in New York. So that starts being abusive. And there's another also, depends on circumstances. Sometimes people would review political issues. They would project it in certain times because they are charged. And sometimes they would review streets, New York itself, because they would be upset how dirty it would be or how not safe. But then I would think like, yeah, this I cannot change, right? But I have to take it. So it's different, you know. How do you sell something? How do you welcome? And how do you even extend yourself onto the street, you know? This is the question now. How much are you extendable? Yeah, that's interesting. I have a lot of experience and over 1,000 reviews. I'm not sure even if I read them all because I cannot handle them definitely all. I'm a little bit fragile, but I tried.
Thank you, Eleanor. So you actually brought up one of the questions I wanted to introduce into the conversation, which is, do we choose our friends or does it just happen? I know we were talking about earlier in the conversation about all the qualities that we see in friendships, but the question is, how do we choose them? And we talk about different types of friends. Do the friendships just happen, or do we actively choose them? And if we actively choose them, how do you actively choose them? So just wanted to introduce that into the conversation. And up next, I will go to Joe, followed by Jeannie, and then Jane.
So I really quickly, I just want to address what Jeannie said. I agree with you. Friendships can be, something that an everyday occurrence. You can learn from everybody and in our everyday interactions with individuals. But there are certain degrees of closeness that we have with certain friends. And I think that's where the categories kind of come in more than anything else. Even though I'm not a very big fan of Aristotle's categories, I think some of them do have their uses with the friends of convenience. And so you can learn from somebody that you just sit next to and your interaction with them and walk away a much wiser individual because of what they have shared with you. Now this kind of gets to both Ebonique and what Jeannie had said as well. I think that friendships are something that are cultivated over a period of time, and it's not necessarily. I think it's a mutual agreement. There's a degree of reciprocity, so it's never one person choosing the other. It's an agreement between two people. So I think that's perhaps the way I look at friendship. It's not I choose you, you don't choose me. It's something where people are there's a respect that's reciprocated, and then it gets into I think one of the more important things about this discussion is this idea of feedback. Feedback can only be provided by somebody who you open up to, and and they know who you are, they accept who you are, and then they're able to provide you with specific advice, advice that's actionable, and advice that aligns with both your values and your goals. And that's somebody, again, that knows you really well. They can also probe you as well, saying, well, this doesn't match up with what you said in the past. Ensuring a certain degree of consistency exists within your logic. There's also when you're talking about something about feedback, if we were to go into that a little bit deeper, we've talked a lot about here. We had a whole series on listening and speaking. One of the most important things is to be able to listen to what the other person is saying. And I think that that's where a lot of friendships often break down, because sometimes people know what they're going to say before the person has already said what they're, had come to them with a problem. So there's a patience and a listening aspect of that. And this, again, these are kind of basic universal qualities that you would want in any individual. It just is another level. It's a little bit deeper when it's a friend. The other thing that in the feedback aspect of things that I think that it's really important is that if you're listening intently, and you're taking in what they say, and you have integrity, you honestly have the best interest of the individual. And I got to be honest, I don't know who has malevolent interests when they're providing feedback. But let's just say that you've established a rapport with someone. They can actually provide you with clarity and make it the actions unambiguous that you need to take in order to achieve what you want to achieve. I've had conversations and critiques, and they're more critiques and not criticisms, as Allison was talking about. They're critiques, they're genuine critiques. With people that have helped me with maybe the way sometimes I do formulate questions. That sometimes I inject an answer into the question. And that's not necessarily, that kind of misdirects the question itself. That was feedback that I was provided. That was honest feedback. It was good feedback, and I got it from somebody that I trust. It was unambiguous. It was honest, and it was somebody really wanted, who I know wanted the best for me. Now, I can take that and I have to figure out how to implement that. But that's an example of honest feedback that somebody can provide that actually helps you with your personal growth as well. Now, that's just one example. There are a lot of other examples that I could provide, but I think that it is important to come back to as to the as far as how we end up choosing our friends is an important question to ask ourselves. And then also I think digging a little bit deeper is into providing meaningful feedback. And then maybe we could talk a little bit, after that, after maybe some comments, we can go into kind of how group dynamics, the positives and negatives of that, and how friendships evolve, because essentially we're a community of learners here. So that's also practical and relevant to the discussion as well. Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, I have Jeannie, followed by Jing and Eleanor.
Sorry. Well, I just wanted to speak to, I may be thinking of the wrong kind of friends here, but there's something to be said for the person that, somebody put up, it might've been Katie, non-judgmental. I mean, the world is so tough out there sometimes, and you just want somebody that, will accept you and not even be a mirror, just accept. I mean, think mothers, they'll say you were great. And I don't mean, they would lie and, you go out and fall on your face and then they say you're great. But, somebody that accepts you and just is supportive all the time rather than trying to make you grow or, giving you any feedback or anything like that. I don't know. There's just something to be said because it's a refuge, a place that you can go in that friendship that is going to accept you. And I think there's something very lovely about that too.
I think that's a good point, Jeannie. Sometimes, part of friendship is knowing when that person doesn't want feedback or doesn't need feedback in that moment. It's knowing the person enough to say, or even to ask the question, do you want me to give you advice or do you just want me to listen? You just need to let off some steam. I think that's a very valuable point. So thank you for that. Up next, I have Jing, followed by Eleanor.
Yeah, so talking about, who choose the friends. I think, I believe we choose each other. The friends choose each other. It's interesting. Remind me, there's a saying I found it's very funny. It said, someone we think interesting, think we are very boring. And someone we think very boring, they think we are very interesting. And when I heard that, oh, it's so funny. And it's so true too. I think, be friends, you have to appreciate each other. We all like good things. We all like maybe someday they don't appreciate you, even though you are attracted to them, doesn't matter. So being friend has to be mutual, like any other relationship. And I believe there's kind of like gravity or qi or something, like when you meet someone, you just connect. And then I just had this client I meet, and she's from China, and I'm designing this. She has this waterfront house. I'm trying to design it at addition, and we just click. We just talking about different things. And oh, you're skiing. She's just learned 2 years ago, and she was a runner, and like all these things, adventures. It's so interesting. I was like, and she wants to start a business here. So we are talking about all the possibilities. It's just some people you can connect so easily, even though you just met. And I know there's all kinds of friends, and I think people value different things in friends. To me, I think most important quality is inspiration, actually. And there's a thing in Chinese, 君子之交淡如水 means 君子, I don't know how to explain 君子. So it's kind of the elite. Their friendship is like water. So to me, some people think friends so important. They have to help each other solve their problems, And to me, the real friendship is the understanding. It's not like you help me to move in my furniture, I can rely on you. Maybe those are like families, but real friendship, you have to have deep understanding. Like you truly understand each other that nobody else can. And it's very hard to find those people. And actually, I have a childhood friend who died at 14 years old when she was 14 years old. And I was like, I never found anybody like her. When I read a book, like a famous Chinese writer, and at that time, there's no telephone. I went to her house, like so excited to share with her. And she just read that book too. And she trying to find me to share. And we can talk for the whole afternoon. Those kind of friends is so valuable. It's like people who actually understand you, who gets you. And I think those are kind of soulmate in a way. Oh, in China, there's a story about this person who played this kind of instrument, and only the other people can truly understand. They're not lovers or anything, they're friends, and they're both men. But they can truly understand the guy. When that person died, he break his instrument because he know nobody else will ever understand whatever he played. To me, I think this kind of friendship, which is rare, maybe it's almost impossible, but that's the most important quality, is understanding. It's not about helping each other, not about supporting each other. It's about who truly understand you and who help you to understand yourself better.
Thank you, Jing. That's a good point. It's part of friendship is, I think, that emotional connection that you feel towards another person. That, like you said, they get you, and it's not something that you can like it's not like a formula or anything. It's just they understand who you are and you understand who they are, and that's the part I think of deeper friendship, when it's like when you get to know each other and you're connected emotionally. So I think that's a good point. Up next, I have Eleanor, Christy, and Allison.
I just realized that I have from every friend I still kept from my childhood. I have friends as far it goes to age of 6. And from every friend, I still have a present, like a small turtle on my table, or tiny things, basically. And elephant. I have an elephant too. I have a bag and I have a chain. So they're all over this presents basically in my apartment. And then I realized I would have people who are returning over 8 years to my Airbnb. And they would constantly call me up and ask me, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I would be, why are they calling? What do they want from me? Because I wouldn't be feeling like I'm a friend, you know, but I would be like surprised. What is this girl wants from me? Because they would be even sometimes 20 years younger. And I was like, I'm too old to be friends with these people, you know? So, and then I realized, oh, this boy lost his brother. His brother got shot as he was staying at my place. Or this girl lost her mother, or this woman's child fell out of the window. Or somebody's mother died. And yesterday I got a call from a guest who was staying here at least 4 times, but he is constantly returning to my place. And I was also thinking, there must be something similar to like from him, like to others. And I figured it out. His mother died as he was staying here. So I'm obviously good with death situations when people lose people and they are staying at my place. They feel connected and they come over and over again. There must be something about this. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting phenomenon.
Thank you, Eleanor. Up next, I have Christy, followed by Allison.
About 15 years ago, I had to start really working on my boundaries and figuring out what are my boundaries. And so that was kind of a big thing, especially in relationships. So that's something that I just personally had to work on and figure out what those are for me, and then applying them and then building that new muscle. And part of that, I kind of realized that if I'm going to share some things about myself with somebody else, sometimes I have to preface it with saying, it depends on where I'm at. You know, it's like, I want to share this with you. I'm not looking for advice. I'm not looking for you to fix me. I just need you to listen to me. And I want to be vulnerable with you and to share with you what I'm feeling or where I'm at in my life right now. And then the same thing comes true about the opposite direction. I try to be better at asking my friends, do you just need a vent? Do you just want to let me know how you are, where you are in your life? Or are you sharing this with me because you do want my feedback, my suggestions, you know, whatever that may be. So that's kind of a muscle probably in the last 12 to 15 years that I have had to build and continue to work on building that muscle. And then Allison was saying something interesting, because I just want to piggyback on what Allison was saying is, you know, I've got some friends who I've known for like 40 years and I love them no matter what. And there are things about them that annoy me, but I let it go. And I'm sure there are things that I annoy them, you know? So, for me, it's been more about grace, and I love them no matter what, knowing these things that annoy me a little bit. I just kind of let it go. I just, I still love them.
Thank you, Christy. Up next, I have Allison.
I think it's, you know, it is interesting how sometimes like you just click with somebody and you don't even know why. It's just like a magic that happens kind of. And I have one friend that is my oldest friend. We became friends when we were 9. And we just immediately just clicked as children. And I just remember we'd come home from school and we'd call each other up on the phone and then we'd talk for 3 more hours. And, you know, our mothers are like, what do you have to say? You just saw each other all day long. And we're like, we would watch TV together in our separate houses and talk like, and it's just funny. And I don't know, like maybe a year ago, her husband was watching the 2 of us talk and he says, it's just fascinating to watch this like dynamic between you two. And I'm like, we've been doing it for 40 years, like it's fun. Or actually it's 15, like, oh my God, almost 50, not quite 50. But sometimes like a friendship starts with that. It's just that sort of like chemistry, but then over the years, there are times when there was a time when I went through a very, very difficult time in my life, and she was 100% there for me. She was just my rock. And then there was a time where she went through a very, very difficult time in her life. And then I was really there for her. And, and then you just have like the fun time. So I think a really long lasting friendship is all of those things. It's, it's just the silliness and the like, and we can still just like, descend into giggles for hours. And, but what's really important and the true mark of a friend is like, when you are going through something difficult, are they there for you? And do they celebrate? Are they there for you when things go wrong? And also, do they celebrate your good times with you? Some people don't do that. Some people are there for you when things aren't good. And then if your life gets good, they're sort of jealous of your happiness. And that's not a good thing either. I mean, you want the friendship that, they're there for you when you need them and they celebrate your happiness and, they're just kind of like on your side. And, I guess it's not always so easy to find that. And that's why I think it's important. Once I find a friend like that, I want them around, for a very long time.
Thank you, Allison. Up next, I have Joe.
Yeah, one important point that I think that was brought up that I think is worth revisiting is the importance of boundaries when it comes to friendships. There are boundaries that we have that we set up that we have with a friend that they can go so far. Sometimes that's where we kind of understand each other, where they're not going to necessarily push us to be something that we aren't. They not that they wouldn't necessarily push us to be outside of our comfort zone, but they wouldn't necessarily push us to be something that they want us to be. And I think that's a very important distinction and boundary to have, because that means they're respecting you for who you are, and they're not necessarily projecting onto you. And that is a clear understanding of the line that ought not be crossed. And that does come from other aspects of that we had already discussed about listening. But the ability to draw boundaries is essential with any interactions that we have. If we think about the interactions that we have here, there's a certain level of respect that is often, more times than not, that is given to each other so that we are able to actually learn from one another. If those boundaries are actually violated, it no longer becomes a learning exercise. It becomes something else. And I think that if we even from the beginning, when Shrikant had his four rules, in order to maintain a certain amount of order in our conversation, those were boundaries. Now, I understand that those boundaries and the boundaries within a friendship may be different. But what I'm saying is that understanding, and this comes back to the person understanding you, is understanding how far you can go with an individual and what you can and cannot say is also an essential part of connecting with the other person. And especially if you're talking about somebody that is perhaps complimenting you in a friendship. So if somebody compliments you, they may have strengths that you don't have, and that you're kind of able to work better together than you are apart. However, having those strengths, you have to respect the abilities that you have, and respect the abilities of the other person. If you lose respect for that and think about what you're only doing for the person, then it becomes a very distorted view of what the friendship actually ought to be, where it's no longer complimentary. It becomes something where you think you're doing more than you should. So understanding boundaries, our strengths, our weaknesses, how we interact with one another is one of the most essential things. And this gets back again to team dynamics. This gets back into group settings, but it also gets back to one-on-one relationships. So I think it was Christy that may have mentioned this. That is one of the most important things, is being able to set up. And those boundaries can be very, very wide depending on how close you are to the individual. But nonetheless, they have to exist.
Thank you, Joe. And I think one thing just wanted to add about boundaries is that they have to be communicated, right? So sometimes people may touch like a sensitive chord, and they don't know that they've touched it until you communicate it. And I think going along on the group dynamics, Cherie Kant does a good job of communicating those boundaries so they're very clear. And sometimes but in friendships, I think sometimes people don't know that they've hit that button until you tell them. And sometimes you don't even know that's a button until somebody hits it and you're like, I don't want to go there. Can we please not go there? So I think adding to that, there has to be an element of communication, because we feel like these people should know. And how could they know unless you communicate? So I just think that's a good point. Up next, I have Judy, followed by Jing.
Hi, this is a wonderful, 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 wonderful presentation of everyone's love for friends and ideas of friends. I really appreciate everything that everybody's saying. It reminds me of a movie I saw some time ago, which probably most of you have seen. Oh, Lucky Man. If you think you have a friend on whom you think you can rely, you are a lucky man. And I think that the ones that have said that we have friends that go back to childhood, or that they can rely on, they're lucky. I mean, we're lucky to have these friends. I think it all comes to that. Friendship is something that is sacred, and it should be honored. And I also think that it should be a very private thing between two people or more, if you have the luck of having more than two friends at a time. I also think that it should be a very interdependent thing, meaning that we shouldn't totally be independent with one another, or not totally dependent on one another either, but sort of like respect boundaries, respect. I think most of you have said that, but respect their sense of quietness, or respect when they don't want to talk, or respect when they don't want to talk to you or call you or whatever. Just respect them for who they are, persons. And lastly, I want to say that I think the word friend has been overused. It just, people use it very and I don't know, without even thinking, oh, he's my friend, or she's my friend, or whatever. When there's other labels that we can use to describe people, companions, anything, but try to think before you say. I try to think before I say, oh, she's my friend. Well, she's somebody that I know, I respect, I love, but not necessarily, we're friends, and friends should be more deep, more honest, more sacred. So that's what I wanted to say about friendship.
Thank you, Judy. I think that's a good element that you just added to the conversation. Maybe we could talk about that too, is the overuse of the word friendship. Like, how casually do we throw that word around? Oh, they're my friend. Well, what do you mean by friend? Because when I think of friend, I think it's somebody that's close to a person. and you have a bond or something like that, and it may not be that. So I think that's a good point to just bring up into the conversation. So thank you. Up next, I have Jing, followed by Christy.
Yeah, Judy, very good point. I actually remind me of, how limited our languages are. I remember I read somewhere, at South Pole or something, they have like several different words describe snow. So we need more words to describe friends than just friends. We need all different words. That may hurt some people too. But when I heard all this, it's quite interesting. It reminded me about, friendship is like any other relationship. You need some kind of chemistry. You need like attractive personality. And also that's the beginning of any relationship. But then with that, you also have to spend time with each other to build this trust, build this, get to know each other. That's kind of like some people you click, but then you never see each other again. Then some people you may not click, but you always hang out with each other because you know each other forever. So it seems you need both of these things to exist. And also, friends takes time. I think to tell if somebody is your friend or not, it really at time is the best way to testing. I have this analogy, I actually told one of my friends who actually was, I know through the online dating, but it didn't work out at dating, but we become friends. But anyway, so I said, oh, friends is like collecting of pebbles when you're walking on the beach. Like you find, oh, this is interesting pebble, So you walk along in your life, then you collect a few things you like, your friends, then they stay with you. The other things are not, you just throw them away or whatever. So it takes time and you keep collecting new ones, but then you still pressure something you like forever. I think that's kind of interesting analogy. And also, I also learned, because I mentioned about my best friend died, at 14 years old, I was so devastated. I think I realized, like, it's so hard when you lost somebody you can talk to all the time. So I realized, we need friends, not just one friend. Just like we can't rely on our hopes on our partners. We can't let the partner fulfill all our needs. Friend the same, we can't ask one friend to fulfill all our needs. So its analogy is like a bench. If you have many legs, one leg broken, you're still standing. But if you rely on one person, for your emotional support or whatever, if that person disappears, then you're fall apart. So you need several friends to support you as a bench to be more stable. That may be healthy too. So, and also I observed, in this discussion, we have mostly women here, except a few men. And also we also talk about, it's funny, like we always like to gather a few girlfriends and they all drink tea, chatting. And the husband, they never get together. And they all lonely stay home. So each other, why don't they get together? And I found it's funny, like women love to social. That's why women maybe live longer. So they like to emotional support each other. But men, for whatever reason, they don't initiate, they don't hang out. There are people are, but mostly. So I think that's why I don't see a lot of men except Joe, who is such a and someone. So we need men have more emotional connections. So anyway, that's just one observation I have.
Thank you, Jing. Up next, I have Katie, followed by Christy, Joe, and Jeannie, and then Allison. And then I will be right back. So Joe or Jing, you're moderating.
Yeah, I think other languages have more ways to separate out you. That was one of the ways I found really stressful when I lived abroad, because I never figured out when to say the more formal one or when to say the informal one. And I think another one, my neighbor has I wanted to talk about a functioning relationship rather than one that doesn't function. I think they also build in gestures like calling and knocking. And otherwise they have like a thing where they just walk by unless they've called or knocked or something like that, some gesture to build in that the asking.
I wanted to just add that, you know, when I was starting to work on what my boundaries were, it was also like, what is a safe person for me? So that's been really big, and just really trying to figure out what is a safe person for me, you know, and if it's somebody's not a safe person for me, that maybe in my family or a friend, how do I navigate that relationship? But I think I'm better at knowing who I can go to for what, and that then defines, for me at least, those friendships, or the level of friendship I have with the different people.
Can I ask you just a brief follow-up? Because I think that this is one of the most important points that we can be making. How do you make that distinction? How do you say this is a friend for me? Because I think that that's kind of what the conversation is really all about. I mean, and when you're talking about it, what is it that makes the person a good friend? Because I would probably say that it maybe is not just for you. There's some universal qualities there that probably exist for the rest of us as well.
I'm just trying to think. So when I started doing all this work, it was in kind of it was divorce relationship recovery group. And there are a couple of books that are written by a couple of Christian therapists, Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And there's one, it's called the book, it's about boundaries. And then they have a safe, what is a safe person book. And then they also have this Changes That Heal book. So at first I had to figure out what's my own crap. And I had to kind of work on healing myself, which is a constant thing. And somebody brought up the word forgiveness. It's also, for me, it's also about forgiveness of myself and forgiveness of other people. And I think a safe person and boundaries are unique to each one of us. So most of my life, I have been a nice person to everybody. And as I smile at everybody, I'm an extrovert. And then life happens and things happen, and I was just depleted. And so I kind of had to work from the inside out. And so I don't want to waste my time with people. And I don't have the energy to waste my time with people who don't feed back into me, because most of my life I have fed into other people, and I've been the cheerleader for everybody. Nobody necessarily asked me to be a cheerleader, but that's just kind of the role that I grew up being. And so I do spend more time thinking about what do I need to feed me in a healthy way. And I also brought up the fact earlier that, you know, we do need to sharpen other, you know, we just have experiences in our lives where we do sharpen other people. They may not sharpen us back. If I have an overflowing of energy, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm just trying to share.
So yeah, I mean, I think that, and you think you did, and I think that there's another important point that you actually had raised, was this idea of looking inward in order to act out. I mean, you know, you have to look in and understand yourself in order to establish a good relationship. So that's, I think, because sometimes we don't see our own blind spots, and you know, that's where the feedback part comes in. But we have to do the deep introspection work that actually allows us to understand that when something comes up for us, why it's coming up, and whether it's our reaction or if it's objectively something that was said that was maybe inappropriate. So our relationships with others can then be fortified by, you know, the fact that we're actually doing our inner work as well. So that was a part of the point that I was making, is that a lot of times when I hear individuals say that a friendship has ended because the other person wasn't doing what A, B, or C, or D, they haven't looked inward.
Yeah. Can we move on?
And that's the biggest problem. Yes,
Yeah.
so Allison, you're next.
Yeah,
Joe, I'm sorry, it was Jeannie next.
Oh, it's Jeannie next. Okay,
oh,
sorry.
okay. Sorry, Joe.
Joe, and you went, right, Joe?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't need to go.
Okay. So up next is Jeannie, Allison, and then Eleanor.
Okay, but did you have something to say, Jang? I know you're the leader, so no. Okay. Well, I wanted to you know, speak for the flexibility of the word friendship. And you know, like I said, I have everybody's my friend by default, because sometimes you know, down the road, somebody you had a very casual relationship with, you may have a deeper relationship with. And many of the people that you have a very deep relationship with at one time, it just may trail off and not exist later on. So there's this flexibility when you try to, you know, categorize your friends. And I mean, one thing that really irritates me is when somebody wants to make me their bestie. I mean, I don't want to be your bestie. You know, it's too possessive to me. They're taking over. I'd rather just be a friend than a bestie, you know, just want to say.
Thank you, Jeannie. Up next, um, I have Allison, Eleanor, and Jing.
So there are two things. First, when King was talking about women having friends and men having friends, you know, like the difference, it was pretty funny to me because I belong to like an in-person book club that is mostly men. There are some women in there, but the men outnumber the women. And I really enjoy the group. I really enjoy the men. I really enjoy the conversations. But it's kind of interesting. It's like you sort of show up, talk about the book, and then you leave, and it's very like cut and dry. And just this week I joined another group because I thought, well, I've got more time, I'll join two book. I really just like this one book, so I showed up. Wasn't sure if I was going to want to continue or not, but it was funny because the group was all women. And you know, I really like both groups, but it was a totally different dynamic. They instantly were like, now let's go to dinner and let's go to see a movie and let's go see, and they just were like, we're here to become friends in the book. And it was so funny how it's just like what you're saying, like, it's just different. And I'm going to stay in that one too. So I like them both, you know, for different reasons. But the other thing that I was thinking about when Christy was talking about boundaries, I'm kind of similar too, that I've always been a people pleaser, and I had a hard time establishing boundaries probably most of my life. And but what I have found probably in the last couple of years that I've started establishing them more, but what I've realized is that my approach is not to just go tossing people out of my life left and right. You know, it was more that I realized that I have to sometimes speak up for myself. And that sometimes if I feel like someone's crossing a boundary, sometimes they don't know that they're, you know, like maybe they're hitting that really soft spot for me and it's affecting me and they don't know why. And so sometimes I have to, you know, I have to take the initiative to explain to them, this is bothering me and this is why, or this is not a subject I want to talk about, or, you know, this is triggering me for some reason. So, and what I think I was afraid that if I started to stand up for myself, that everybody would disappear. And what I realized is that didn't happen at all. That usually someone would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize," or whatever, and it actually made the relationships better and deeper, which is, you know, what I really couldn't expect it at all. But it was good to find that. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison. Up next, I have Eleanor, followed by Jing.
I only call friends my old friends as I was 6 or 14, 18. I stopped calling people friends since I'm 19. I like to use terms such as neighbor or coworker or boss or friend of a friend, or I did a job with this person together, or we met at the bar, or we met coincidentally at the birthday, and it stays like this. I like more define people by actions, what I did with them, and I always remember the first actions I did with people. And when I join projects and people introduce themselves, oh, we are friends, we are all friends. I have a problem with this because I think these teams are not truthful. They are not great. It's just my experience, but if people claim at work that they're friends, they're most likely not friends. And it's a toxic environment you should run. I prefer just to, sometimes I get asked, are we friends? And I would say, no, I don't know. Because I don't want to be anyone's friend. I feel welcome, but it's not necessarily I want. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but it's not a necessity. It's a privilege.
Thank you, Eleanor. I would like to follow up really quick on that. So you say you call them like, so are you saying that you don't consider that you have friends, or do you just define them in different ways?
Sometimes you would meet people and they would ask, where do you guys know each other? And I would say, I worked with this person together, or I met this person here and here, or we were doing this and this project. And in reality, I would work for 10 years with this person already, but I would still not call them friends. I have people I work for 10 years, 12 years together. This is some of my friends. And I do big stuff with them. So I get kind of like, I define my circles, but by more, I have functionalities, I have to deliver stuff in different niches.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jane. Eleanor. Up next, I have Jane.
Yeah, I think people, this friend, is such a general, word. So I think people have very different understanding what friend means or define. So I think, to me personally, friend can be anybody I know. They can be my friends or anybody I don't know. I think the only problem is, as we get older, we start to realize we have limited time and energy. It's just like I have this analogy of time and energy like money. Like when you're young, you have all this money, it seems you just squander it. You like to know everybody, like get along, so then when you get older, it's oh my God, I only have this little money left. I have to be cautious who I spend time with. I like to know anybody, but you don't know, it takes time to know a person. Maybe you waste all your time, you get nothing. Nothing is not materialized. Like somebody mentioned, friendship, you have to be mutually benefit, like you feed each other emotionally or spiritually. You have to benefit each other, then it's sustainable relationship or friendship. If you just one person feed the other person, then they will deplete it. So as we get older, unfortunately, we get kind of live a smaller life. We're more closed instead of like open to new possibilities, meeting new people all the time. So it's same to the friends. So I don't really like to know new people anymore. I realize, I don't have time to deal with them. So, which is unfortunate. But I found another interesting is, the good thing is like, if our friend introduce someone, usually there's much more likelihood they can be our friends. Because when they get along with our friends, they have a lot of common with our friends. Then the friends have more common with us. This is a way more efficient way to make friends. Just like, I have my own small business as architect, and I don't do any advertisement. Mostly my clients I refer by my other clients. And it works so much more efficient because the percentage of successful rate is over 90% almost. So I think, as we get older, actually, friend is the best way to know friends.
Thank you, Jing. If anyone else has any questions or comments, you can type exclamation part, but we are getting close to the end of the time we have here today. So if you guys also want to share your takeaways, we can do that at this point as well. So I'll give it a second. If not, then I'll start sharing my takeaways. Um, okay, I'll start sharing it if anybody else wants to type, they can. Um, I think this was a great discussion, especially for it to be such like you said, no, it's not our usual way, like in terms of a presenter, but I think the things that I took away that I can, think about when I'm thinking about the friendships that I have is this first thing is like, are we willing to take feedback from friends? Um, knowing this person has our best, I think the thing that I took away is like knowing that that person has your best interest at heart. And even if you can't take their advice or you think their advice is not good, you can respect where it's coming from. Um, and the question of how do you tell who has your best interest at heart? I think for the most part, I think we can all agree that for the most part, there are people um, that mean you well. And for those people that don't mean you well, I think you have to have a certain level of forgiveness and also a set of boundaries with that person. If that person doesn't mean you well or is not happy when you're happy, something great happens in your life, you can look at that and say, what's up with this person's life that that doesn't allow them to be happy for you. Maybe it could be something that they not don't even notice, and maybe it's just a straight up asking them the question. you know hey, I noticed when I share great things about my life, you seem not to be happy for me. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way it seems like over here. And then have a conversation. Maybe they can discover something too. But if you notice that they don't really want to talk about it, or you know um, they don't see it that way, then you have to like know for yourself when to set up a boundary. And the importance of boundaries in friendship to protect your own well-being. Sometimes when people, aren't happy for you, maybe you have to keep them at a certain distance, and that's okay. Um, thank you, Christy, for joining us. Um, and so those are the main takeaways I got. So I will. Oh, Jeannie, please go. Jeannie, you're on mute.
Sorry. Well, I wanted to say, I feel kind of about the way Eleanor feels about the word friend. I feel about love. I don't like to bandy that about, I like to wait until I really feel it deep before I say I love you. But, even though we want to spread love around, for me, that word is harder. But I wanted to say something about being your own friend and putting the mirror up against yourself. I mean, you can pretty easily have, if one of you is ranting, the other one can put the mirror up and say, look at yourself, and having yourself as a friend is a very beneficial thing. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. You can be a friend to yourself.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Oops.
Up next, I have Bill. Oh, sorry. Did you want to add something?
No, I did the wrong thing. Sorry.
No worries. Up next, I have Bill.
Thanks. This has been a really, really great discussion. I arrived 20 minutes late, but I've been listening really carefully to everyone since I arrived, and I could not contribute because I was washing dishes. But there were so many points at which I wanted to contribute, but I'm just going to pick one of them. when someone was talking. I couldn't tell the names of anyone who was talking because my cell phone was in my back pocket. But anyway, someone was talking about getting clear on their own stuff. I think they used the word crap. I just, in my own experience, I just used the word issues or challenges, whatever. So in sorting through kind of what's going on for me on the inside when frictions arise in a friendship, or to avoid frictions arising, looking within, the clarity I seek is what are my needs and who to go to for which needs. And that learning curve on that was inspired by a Buddhist meditation teacher who said in a meditation class to all of us, quote, talk to people who can hear you. Oh, okay, so that's the microwave beeping. You might not have heard what I said. Let me say it again. The Buddhist meditation teacher said, quote, talk to people who can hear you, unquote. And I reflected on it. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Talk to people who can hear me. Don't talk to people who can't hear me. Okay, sounds simple. And then a few months later, I realized, wait, it's a little deeper than that. It's like when I'm talking to someone, talk to them about what they can hear me about, and don't talk to them about what they can't hear me about. And I've been on that learning curve of how to tell what a person's hearing me about and what other stuff they're not hearing me about for like 15 years. And I'm still like just an advanced beginner, you know? So anyway, the point is like, what is there going on in me that needs to be heard, and who can hear it? Which is my closest 3 friends, they can hear most things I need to get, expressed. But even them, they can't hear everything. So I go to my meditation muse, or I go to God in prayer, whatever. But the clearer I can get on what my needs are on the inside, the clearer I can go into the next question of who to go to get that need met. Myself, my friends, acquaintances, work colleagues, meditation muse, God in prayer, whatever. So I just wanted to throw those ideas out on the table to add them to the mix. And thanks for listening. I'll pass.
Thank you, Bill. You know what? I just had a thought, and it just, the good point about what you were saying, knowing what you need and knowing who you can get that from is very important. I think that speaks to the whole meetup tonight on friendships. Is knowing what you need and being able to read yourself and know that, and then knowing who can hear that. And I think that's very wise. So thank you. Jeannie, you wanted to add something?
Yes, there was something else. I wanted to add that, in terms of advice, I mean, I take advice from anybody, and it doesn't have to be a friend. And you just gather it up like it's, don't put it in, just hold it, because a lot of times people that don't like you at all can still tell you some really good advice. And I just take it all. I love it. You want to tell me advice, go ahead. But I don't take it personally and take it inside. I just, hold it separate.
Good point. Jeannie, Jing or Joe, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this conversation. Unfortunately, we didn't have chance to talk, like what Joe mentioned, the group aspect of friends, like what we are doing here, group learning, which I found is very powerful. Like when you share similar interest, when you learn together, it's so much more fun, so much more efficient. So I think maybe we will do another meeting sometime later when we have no speaker again. So, which is more fun actually. Once in a while, I think we need time to actually talking with each other instead of just learning new things together. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Jing. Joe, anything you want to add before we close out tonight?
Sure. I appreciated all the comments. I thought that a lot of them were, very deep, and I appreciate we had a pretty good audience this evening. So, I also think that it would be worthwhile to look into the group dynamics aspect of things, especially since that's what we do here. A lot of the motivation that we have is that there are so many people here and that so many people with differing opinions, diverse opinions. It keeps us coming back. So I think that that's an important part to discuss when we're talking about group dynamics and friendship. Also, the words we use, we were held accountable. Sometimes, people disagree respectfully and have us rethink our opinions. And I think that that's it's an active friendship, even if we don't necessarily consider the person a friend, as a very close friend anyway. As far as the overall meetup went, I thought this is actually what we, try to accomplish here is with this particular meetup. The goal of this meetup is design your life. Now, we've talked a lot about design. We've talked a lot about philosophy, whether it be the Tao, the Gospel of John, whether it be the Bhagavad Gita, or in Seneca's letters. All of those works, especially Seneca's letters, actually talks about the importance of friendship and in how virtue plays a role in friendship. And what we've kind of talked about here is the more practical aspects of it. And I think that one of the reasons I asked the question to Christy a little bit earlier as to, what is it that she thought would make a good friend? I think that as a common agreement, we would say that somebody that is virtuous and authentic in their virtue, in the sense that they're really here to try to learn, and they're really here for the right reasons, to engage and to make everybody else better. That is a friendship that's worth cultivating. And those are the types of friends that we all, I think, could agree that are worth our time. And so that kind of brings in everything kind of together on a very practical end, the stories we shared, but also on the philosophical end. So it's kind of bridging that gap that this meetup initially set out to do. So I thought that this was a very good meetup. And I'm really looking forward to our next meetup next month. And Ebony, do you want to announce what's upcoming over the next few days? I know that I'll just say that there will be a Buckminster Fuller event this Sunday evening. Once we have the description from Kurt McNamara, I believe it'll be Kirk. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shrikant, on Sunday. I do not know
Yep.
the topic. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
That's the plan. He's going to be talking, and he should be sending his description shortly. Is very
Okay.
prompt. It's continuation of his book. So I'm very, very excited about what Kurt is doing, because he's looking at all of Buckminster Fuller's ideas and he's presenting them in an amazing way, fairly modern way of using, these mind maps and bringing so many things together. So he's going to be doing the next chapter this Sunday.
Awesome.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so Ebony, do you want to go ahead and read the rest of them that are upcoming?
Sure. So on Tuesday, September 19th, we have reading the Analects with Confucius chapter by chapter. Just trying to see.
The second half of 13. We'll be
Okay,
reading the
thank you.
second half.
And then on Wednesday, we have Comprehensivist Wednesdays, which we do alongside the Greater Philadelphia Thinking Society. I don't think we have. I think
It'll be Sanjay. It'll be our neuroscience Wednesday this week.
Okay, thank you. And on Thursday is the conversation is what is art? Aristotle's Politics and the Birth of Aesthetics. And then on Friday we have Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. And we're going to be reading the 3 great Greek plays. So that looks like that's fun. Unfortunately, I'll be out of town, but hopefully maybe I can check in. We'll see. And then I think that's when we go into Saturday. So think that's a good place to stop.
Sounds good.
So, I just want to say, thank you to everyone for coming tonight. This was, again, a great and insightful discussion. You guys really made the meetup, everybody that participated, everybody that listened. So thank you. And Joe and Jane, do you have any last words before we say goodnight?
Yeah, so I really appreciate everybody participate. So when we were trying to find a topic to discuss, and I actually said, no matter what we discuss, we will have fun conversations. So just like the group of people we are here, we can talk about any topic and we will get a lot of insight, have a lot of fun. So that's the power of the friend. I don't know, some people may not think I'm friend. I think all of you are my friends anyway.
We agree. Well, I can say for myself, I agree, Jane. Joe, any last words?
No, I think Jang said it perfectly.
All right. Well, good night, my friends. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
You
Bye.
too.